Hey there, folks, and welcome out to the Single Player Podcast. I'm your one and only host, I'm 16, and I got a good show for this week because we're going to be talking about Microsoft faces the EU, Kevin Conroy passes away, Mick Gordon releases a statement about Doom Eternal, plus more. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and I'll be with you in a bit. Alright folks, we're back, and now it's time to start the show with my favorite segment, your favorite segment, everyone in the world's favorite segment. It's time for the gaming forecast. So let's see what's coming out in the week of November 20th to the 26th. Okay, on the 22nd, you have just 4 games coming out. Evil West for Windows, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach for Xbox One and Xbox Series X. Gungrave Gore for Windows, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. And Ship of Fools for Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X. And that was your gaming forecast. Yep, just one day out of the entire week. Now, because of that, I will remind you all that these dates are subject to change. Sometimes games are added and removed, so always keep it aware, keep an eye out for any changes. Happens all the friggin' time. And it's kind of annoying because these dates will even change, like, from the moment I record this to the day the episode comes out, okay? There will be changes. Also, if you like any of the music that will be played in this week's episode, links are in the description. And with that being said, let's move on to our first topic. Okay, so for our first story, we gotta talk about Microsoft. So as you all know, right now they're in the middle of buying Activision Blizzard, and which itself is in the middle of being approved by various countries around the world. Well, it appears it might actually be torpedoed by Europe. Yeah, so recently the European Commission has been looking into it themselves, and it's not exactly looking good for Microsoft. The European Commission said, and I quote, "The Commission's preliminary investigation shows that the transaction may significantly reduce competition on the markets for the distribution of consoles and PC video games, including multi-game subscription services and/or cloud game streaming services, and for PC operating systems. The preliminary investigation suggests that Microsoft may have the ability, as well as a potential economic incentive, to engage in foreclosure strategies vis-a-vis Microsoft's rival distributors of console video games." Wow. So, yeah. Now, of course, they haven't made a conclusion yet, and it'll take them about 90 workdays, which will be March 23rd of next year, and that's when they will decide whether or not to clear or block the deal. Now, I don't know what this means if they do block the deal, because keep in mind that these are 2 American companies. I don't know if European Union can even approve of it or not, or maybe if Activision Blizzard's operations in Europe are supposed to be a separate company and only the American branches are bought out by Microsoft. But if they do decide to block it, that actually might hurt Microsoft a lot, because keep in mind that the deal itself is supposed to close in June of next year. So it's possible the European Union could torpedo this entire thing before it even gets off the ground. And if I'm being quite frank, I actually kind of hope that that's what happens. Because let's be honest here, I don't like Activision Blizzard. All right, they're a shitty company. They've basically become a shadow of their former selves, especially Blizzard. But at the same time, I don't like the idea of anyone as big as Microsoft just buying them out. Okay, you're talking about one of the biggest publishers in the world. Okay, I don't like the idea of Microsoft owning them, especially owning that many IPs. So I'm kind of hoping that this entire deal just falls through and Microsoft doesn't end up actually buying Activision Blizzard. Especially since it's unfortunately caused a whole bunch of other publishers to start buying out studios as much as humanly possible. I'm of the opinion that Sony probably wouldn't have bought out Bungie if it wasn't for Microsoft trying to buy out Activision Blizzard. So yeah, for the first time, I'm actually kind of rooting for the European Union on this one. I'm kind of hoping that they actually block the entire deal. But anyway, with that being said, let's move on to our next story. Okay, and next up, we got to talk about God of War Ragnarok. So recently it came out. And just like most other games these days, it had a collector's edition. And the collector's edition is actually really nice. You know, you get a whole bunch of stuff. You get these little figurines, dice set. You get a 16-inch replica of Mjolnir. And a whole bunch of digital content like a mini art book, PS4 theme, all that kind of stuff. And of course, the game itself is supposed to include a steelbook display case and a digital code for the game. Well, it appears that some people are getting neither, as it's been reported that people are getting their collector's editions and finding neither a steelbook or a code for the game. Yeah. Now, this is probably one of the biggest fuck-ups I've ever heard of when it comes to, like, a collector's edition. And keep in mind, we're talking, this is Sony, all right? This ain't some sort of, small company doing this, okay? This is a major publisher. And yet somehow, for some reason, they fucked up so badly that people have paid $200 for a collector's edition, and neither does it include the full game itself or the steelbook case. Which, by the way, does that make any sense? Okay, I get the fact that you're not including a physical disc, but why include a steelbook at all? Okay, like if I can't put the disc inside of it, then why even include it? That to me makes no sense. You know, I have a couple of collector's editions that have steelbooks, and they still include physical copies of the game that you could put inside of the steelbook. But you know what? At the same time, I honestly can't feel sympathy for these people. I can't. You paid $200, okay, for a collector's edition of the sequel to one of the shittiest God of War games ever made. And yeah, I will go to my grave saying that God of War 2018 was a titanic piece of shit. And that's coming from someone who has played every single game before that one and has beaten almost every one of them. I never finished Ascension, but I finished God of War 1, 2, 3, Ghost of Sparta, and Chains of Olympus. Okay? I love those games. I love them to death. But God of War 2018, I played that fucker for 2 hours. I ejected the disc, put it back in the case, and I never touched it ever again. Because that game was such a titanic pile of shit. And I still will never, to this day, understand why anyone loves it. So, honestly, it sucks, but I can't feel sympathy for you because you paid $200 for a shitty sequel. Okay? A shitty sequel to a shitty game. Alright? And it's turning out that it's even worse than the first one. Like, apparently it has even more of those parts where, like, you're walking and everyone's giving exposition. Yeah, it's still doing that shit, except even more so than even the first game did. Oh, boy. Let me tell you, you know what? At this point, I'm convinced that sometime after 2013, Sony basically required all of their first-party games to be exactly like The Last of Us. Oh, boy. Sony, what the fuck happened to you? Anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
Tell the God of War I am his no longer.
His is a journey fueled by rage and madness. For he seeks to bring down a god. God of War. Rated M for mature.
All right, folks, we're back. And first up on our next round of stories, we have some sad news, as it's been confirmed that actor Kevin Conroy has passed away at the age of 66 after losing a battle with cancer. Kevin Conroy is probably best known as the voice of Batman. He's been playing the character for over 30 years. In fact, I would even go as far as to say that he is the voice of Batman for an entire generation. You know, he is to my generation what Adam West was to my dad's generation, because my dad's a boomer. He grew up with the 60s Batman TV series. To him, Adam West was his Batman. To me, it was between two actors, Michael Keaton and Kevin Conroy. And if I'm being quite frank, the best of the two was Kevin Conroy. He was Batman for over 30 years, and not just in the animated series and other stuff such as Justice League, but even in video games. Going as far back as The Adventures of Batman and Robin on the Sega CD, which actually has these animated sequences that were exclusive to the Sega CD version. So yeah, it's not like the Power Rangers game where they took scenes from the show and just kind of threw it into the game. No, there are the game is basically its whole animated episode. It's basically a lost episode in and of itself. So he did voice his first video game was Adventures of Batman and Robin. He also did Batman Vengeance and Rise of Sin Tzu, but probably his best work, and in my opinion, the one that I think a lot of people remember him for, was the Arkham games. Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight. And that was a real treat for us kind of when it first came out, because that was like the first time in many years he had voiced the character in a game. And well, it wasn't just that, it was the first time I think him and Mark Hamill had played Batman and the Joker together. So that was just a real treat for a lot of us who had grown up with the animated series to play a game with the two of them in there as Batman and Joker. Was just like, that was absolutely amazing. Arkham City is a phenomenal game. Still is, in my opinion, probably the best of the whole Arkham games in general. And the fact that they included the animated series costumes in there, I think that is just absolutely amazing. Of course, he also reprised his character in various other Batman games afterwards, and even DC games such as Injustice: Gods Among Us, the Infinite Crisis, Injustice 2, Lego DC Supervillains, all that sort of stuff. So, dude has an absolute massive career. Oh, he also had some voice work in Jak and Daxter, The Precursor Legacy, and Max Payne 2. Yeah, I know, it's kind of surprising, but yeah, he did have some stuff outside of Batman. In fact, he was also in Crusaders of Might and Magic as well. So, yeah, dude has a tremendous backlog. Not just, of course, video games, but also animated as well, even outside of Batman. So, yeah. It's honestly, I can't think of anyone else who could replace him. To me, he is the voice of Batman. You can't replace anyone like him. You could try, but you can't replicate it. It's like how they've tried to replace Mel Blanc for several years, but they can never really get it right. You know, it sounds somewhat like Bugs Bunny, but it's not Bugs Bunny, because you can't replace Mel Blanc. You know, same thing I feel with Batman here, okay? You can try to replace Kevin Conroy, but you can't replicate it, okay? You can't replicate him. He is the voice of Batman. So my condolences to his family and friends. This must be really hard on them. And rest in peace, Kevin Conroy. You are the man. Anyway, with that being said, let's move on to our next story. Alright, and next up, we've got an update on the Gran Turismo movie. That's right, they're making a film based on Gran Turismo. Now, I know what you're thinking, how the hell would that work? Because Gran Turismo doesn't actually have a story. It's a racing simulator. Well, here's the thing, apparently it does. Filming recently started. We got our first somewhat image of it. And apparently, instead of being a story based within the universe of Gran Turismo, instead it's actually based on a real life story. That's right. According to their tweet, it says, and I quote, Filming is now underway on Gran Turismo movie based on the inspiring true story of a Gran Turismo player, Jan Mardenborough, who won a series of gaming competitions leading him to become an actual professional race car driver. That's right, it's actually based on a real person who was the third and youngest winner of GT Academy. Which was a TV series that was in collaboration with Sony and Nissan, in which Gran Turismo players from around the world would compete against each other to actually win a real-life professional racing career with Nissan. And apparently this guy won, and he was the youngest person to ever win this competition. And it's about his rise from a Gran Turismo player to an actual race car driver. And you know what? I gotta say, it's actually a really interesting story. You know, I find it interesting how, like, you can have a game that has no story, but you can still kind of adapt it because you base it off a real-life event, you know? Like, I've always believed that there should be a Tetris movie, but it shouldn't be like some sort of fictional story about Tetris. It should actually be about the creation and the sort of war for the rights of Tetris. Because it's basically, if you don't know the story of Tetris, it's basically a real-life spy novel in and of itself. So I find it really interesting how they took a game that doesn't really have any sort of story to it, and they just based it off of a real-life event. I looked a little bit more into the film, and apparently it's actually coming out on August 11th of 2023, and it's being directed by Neil Blomkamp. Yep, that's right, the same director of District 9. So definitely going to be looking forward to that one. I might even do a review of it on the show next year. So anyway, until then, let's move on to our next story. Okay, and next up, we've got some news about Nintendo. Now, last week I talked a bit about their earnings report that came out. And while the report itself actually looks pretty good for Nintendo, there were some unfortunate news. For example, Nintendo had to lower their projection by about 2 million units. Well, during the report, one thing that was mentioned was the idea of a price hike for Nintendo Switch. And, well, they had a very interesting thing to say. They said, "It won't take such actions at this moment, but we'll continue monitoring the situation and carefully consider whether they need to take the option." Now, in my opinion, I get why Nintendo would consider doing that because, you know, like I said, sales are actually much lower than they're projected to be. I wouldn't say that's just because of the shipping and production issues that are hitting everyone right now. It's also the fact that, let's be honest here, when a console hits 100 million sales, it starts to drop. Okay, because everyone already who wants one already has one. They have no need for any more. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of it isn't just because of the shipping and production issues. It's also just simply the age of the Switch itself. Remember, folks, the Switch is now 5 years old, going on 6. And even back when it came out, the hardware was already kind of outdated. It was, yeah, it could still run games that were available on PS4 and Xbox One. But now there's a lot of games on PS5 and Xbox Series X that can't even run on the system. I know Sonic Frontiers came out for it, and that's probably the shittiest version of Sonic Frontiers. I saw Digital Foundry's video of it, and yeah, it looks absolutely terrible on the Switch. I honestly think what Nintendo needs to do is not focus on hardware sales, but more focus on software. Because if you can keep pumping out software as much as possible, you'll be able to hold the Nintendo audience for quite a while. And they've got quite a lot of stuff coming out next year. You know, they've got new Fire Emblem, new Zelda, Kirby's Return to Dreamland is a remake. You've got Pikmin 4 ready for next year. I think possibly even Metroid Prime 4 and Advance Wars, okay? I think what Nintendo should do is focus on preparing a more powerful Nintendo Switch to come out right as soon as these production and shipping issues are cleared and when the economy gets better. Because when that happens, people are going to want to get an entirely brand new Nintendo system. And if you can release a console just as soon as the economy gets better, you will have incredibly strong sales. So I think that will work out for Nintendo. But currently Nintendo, I don't think it's good enough to actually focus on price hiking your system and such. I think what you need to do is focus on software. You have a built-in audience. If you can focus on that and keep them at bay, you'll do well. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
Citizens living in the grip of fear, the evil underworld of the city polluting the streets. It's time to take out the trash. Fight through incredible 3D animation against Gotham City's vilest villains in Sega's Adventures of Batman and Robin video game.
Alright folks, we're back, and first up in our last round of stories, we gotta talk about Doom Eternal. I love Doom Eternal. That was a great game. In fact, it's the sole reason why I built my current gaming PC, because I needed a gaming rig that could actually play it on launch day. And, well, after it came out, there was a bit of a controversy regarding the official soundtrack. I remember when this happened. I think it was the collector's edition was supposed to come with it at launch. It didn't because it was delayed, and then when it finally came out a few months later, like 2 months later, it wasn't that good, and people weren't exactly happy with it. And I remember somewhere around the line, Mick Gordon was asked about his future plans with id Software, and he basically said he would never be working with them ever again. And then Marty Stratton of id posted an open letter on Reddit, okay, talking about why it was delayed and such. And he claimed that it was basically because Mick Gordon was late and giving them excuses and all this kind of stuff. I haven't read it in a long time, but the letter is actually pretty long, and basically they put all the blame on Mick Gordon. Well, reason why we're talking about this, even though this was 2 years ago, is because Mick Gordon put out a post about this on Medium just recently. It's been 2 years, but according to him, he says that Marty Stratton lied in the letter and that it basically destroyed his entire career. Again, it's also a pretty long Medium post, but I wrote down a couple of cliff notes about this. He claims that he was given tight deadlines for final versions of his promised musical tracks, 2 finished pieces of level music per month. He lacked any direction as to what kind of levels or environments those tracks were meant to cover due to constant development changes amidst milestones. He proposed an alternative scheduling plan to management that would allow him to write broader reusable themes first that could then be shaped into specific final versions as levels were hammered out. But it was struck down by Marty Stratton, which resulted in severe crunch. He worked late nights finalizing music for levels that hadn't been designed yet, only for that music to be then thrown out later when it didn't fit the levels made after the fact. And he also had very slow communication from management. He was being cut out of meetings about the music and increasingly ostracized from the rest of the development team. There were also severe pay issues over his time on the game. He was denied payment because id Software had changed their mind and no longer wanted to use his music he had provided. He went unpaid for 11 months, realized that they had used almost all of his music, including numerous tracks he had thought had been rejected, but only had paid him for half of it, and they still haven't done it yet. They announced the Doom Eternal OST without ever having made a deal with him to produce one, because remember, okay, the OST release is produced separately from the actual game music. Okay, a lot of people don't seem to get that, so yeah, remember, whenever these companies put out a OST release, it is always produced separately from the actual music itself. They don't just take it, drag it, drop it, put it into like a disc or something and say, there we go. Anyway, they never made a deal with him to produce one and ignored his attempts to make such a deal. He approached Bethesda directly for a deal and through multiple communication and contract delays got one for 12 songs, which was crunched to complete on time. He went on to say that Stratton once again got involved in negotiations, including additional pressure to finish quickly and revealing that audio design Chad Mossholder had been working on an alternative OST for months. Mossholder's work is largely edits of Gordon's original score and ultimately formed the bulk of the final release, and this is what Gordon is claiming. Stratton scheduled a call with him to discuss the negative feedback to the OST. Largely involved Stratton berating and blaming him for its failings. Gordon claims they ultimately agreed to release a joint statement and was expecting a draft to arrive in his inbox. He was blindsided by Stratton's publication of an open letter on Reddit instead. Gordon says he was harassed, doxxed, and bombarded with emails and phone calls. Pursued legal action, but claims settlement negotiations fell apart when he demanded Stratton take the Reddit post down. He was offered 6 figures to take full public responsibility for the OST's failings, in which he declined. And after months of back and forth negotiations, Stratton became increasingly hostile. They never reached an agreement, and this was all during the time Microsoft announced it would require Bethesda. So, yeah, this doesn't sound exactly good for Bethesda's part. Like, you got this fantastic composer who did an excellent job with Doom 2016, probably one of my favorite, more recent OST releases, and you completely treat him like shit. You don't give him any direction. You completely fuck him over in terms of payment, and then you put out a letter that basically blames everything on him and has a huge impact on his professional and personal reputation. Like, that to me is just so shitty. It's so fucked up. Now, I'm not sure if it's... Now, of course, it's possible that there is a bit of truth in between both of these statements, okay? I'm not going to entirely rule that out. That could in fact be the case, that maybe both of them are telling some truths and some lies, and the truth is somewhere in between. Or it could be just like the Bayonetta issue where you have lies by omission, people are leaving things out. But what is interesting about this entire thing is that Mick Gordon does actually have receipts, unlike Helena Taylor. He actually has evidence showing his side of things. And again, doesn't exactly bode well for Bethesda, in my opinion. Here's the way I see it, okay? I think, obviously, Gordon, if what he is saying here is completely true, he is owed payment for it. And he is owed a damn good apology from Marty Stratton. I don't think that'll ever happen, but if this is all true, he damn well deserves it. Because, again, the man is a fantastic composer. I loved his music on Doom 2016. Eternal's OST was not as good as 16, but still pretty awesome, overall. Anyway, with that being said, let's move on to our next story. Alright, and next up we have some news about the Game Awards for this year because the official nominees list has been released. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. So let's take a look at what we've got here. First and foremost, Best Sports/Racing Game, F1 22, FIFA 23, NBA 2K23, Gran Turismo 7, and Ollie Ollie World. Best Sim Strategy Game, Dune Spice Wars, Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Total War Warhammer 3, 2 Point Campus, and Victoria 3. Best Family Game, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Nintendo Switch Sports, Splatoon 3. Best Adaptation, Arcane League of Legends, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, The Cuphead Show, Sonic 2, Uncharted. Most Anticipated Game, Final Fantasy XVI, Hogwarts Legacy, Resident Evil 4, Starfield, The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. Best Fighting Game, DNF Duel, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R, The King of Fighters 15, Multiverse, Sifu. Best RPG, Elden Ring, Live Alive, Pokemon Legends Arceus, Triangle Strategy, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Best Action Adventure Game, A Plague Tale Requiem, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Stray, and Tunic. Best Action Game, Bayonetta 3, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Neon White, Sifu, and TMNT Shredder's Revenge. Content Creator of the Year, oh god, Carl Jacobs, Ludwig, Nibellion, Nobru, QTC Cinderella. Is that how you pronounce that? I don't know. Why is Nibellion on there? Didn't he just quit? Anyway, Best VR AR Game, After the Fall, Among Us VR, Bone Lab, Moss Book 2, and Red Matter. Best Debut Indie Game, Neon White, Norco, Stray, Tunic, Vampire Survivors. Fuck yeah. Best Community Support, Apex Legends, Destiny 2, Final Fantasy XIV, Fortnite, No Man's Sky. Best Mobile Game, Apex Legends Mobile, Diablo Immortal, Genshin Impact, Marvel Snap, Tower of Fantasy. Best Independent Game, Cult of Lamb, Neon White, Sifu, Stray, Tunic. Games for Impact, A Memoir Blue, As Dusk Falls, Citizen Sleeper, Endling, Extinction is Forever. Hindsight, I Was a Teenage Exo-Colonist. What the hell does Games for Impact mean? Oh god, don't tell me it's like political shit. Best Narrative, A Plague Tale Requiem, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Immortality. Innovation in Accessibility, As Dusk Falls, Ragnarok, God of War Ragnarok, Return to Monkey Island, The Last of Us Part 1, The Quarry. Best Audio Design, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Gran Turismo 7, Horizon Forbidden West. Best Score, A Plague Tale Requiem, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Metal Hellsinger, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Best Art Direction, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Scorn, Stray. Best Ongoing Game, Apex Legends, Destiny 2, The Witch Queen, Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, Fortnite, Genshin Impact. Best Multiplayer, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Multiverse, Overwatch 2, Splatoon 3, TMNT Shredder's Revenge. Best Performance, Ashley Birch, Horizon Forbidden West, Charlotte McBurney, A Plague Tale Requiem, Christopher Judge, God of War Ragnarok, Manon Gage, Immortality, Sonny Soljic, God of War Ragnarok. Best Game Direction, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Immortality, and Stray. And finally, Game of the Year, A Plague Tale Requiem, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Stray, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. So there's your nomination list. I left out some stuff that was mostly like esports related because I'm going to be quite frank. I don't like esports. I think it's absolute shit, and I don't get any of it. So, because a lot of it is like, okay, you got best esports game. You got Counter-Strike Global Offensive, Dota 2, League of Legends, Rocket League, and Valorant. And then you've got like best esports athlete, esports team, esports coach, esports event. I don't care about any of that shit. So yeah, there is your Game Award nominations. We're going to have to wait and see who wins on December 8th. Of course, as you all know, these it's not just an award show. It's basically Geoff Keighley's own mini E3 because you get a lot of new games that's announced at that time. So anyway, guys, let's move on to our next story. And for our last story, we got to talk about the Pokemon anime, folks, because it finally happened. After 25 years on the air, Ash Ketchum has finally become the very best, like no one ever was. That's right, folks. In the recent anime, Ash Ketchum has become officially world champion. It actually friggin' happened. Took the guy like 25 years, but he actually did it. Actually, if I remember correctly, it's actually like 5 years. I remember many years ago, someone actually calculated how much time had actually passed within the series itself, and it's actually like 5 years. Okay? So Ash started when he was like 10, now he's like 15 or something like that. Of course, I'm going off my memory here, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. I just remember hearing about it a couple years ago, but in the anime series, right now they're going through something called the Pokemon World Coronation series, in which, by the way, understand this, that I have not watched the Pokemon anime in like over 20 years, so I have no idea what the hell's going on. I had to catch up. Just when I heard this news, I had to completely catch up on what the hell's been going on. But apparently there's the World Coronation Series, sorry, and it ended with a tournament called the Masters 8 tournament. And of course, Ash had to fight trainers from, I think, the champions of every region he had been through. So a lot of the champions from past series, Lance, Iris, Cynthia, all of them he had to basically fight up against, and he won. He beat the previous champion, Leon, and is now the world champion of friggin' Pokemon. Yeah, he pulled it off. Now, here's the interest. I'm guessing like a lot of people, because again, I haven't watched the anime in many, many years, but I'm guessing like people for years were just like thinking he's never going to make it, he's never going to become champion, all that kind of shit. But nope, he did it. He fucking pulled it off. But now the real question is, where does the anime go after this? I mean, that was basically like the main driving plot point of the entire series. Ash Ketchum wanted to be the very best. Okay, well, he's the very best. What does he do now, you know? It's like, are we going to now follow a new trainer who has to then spend another 25 years until he gets to Ash Ketchum and he has to beat him? I'm pretty sure that would piss off a lot of fans. But whatever happens, we all know now that Ash Ketchum is, in fact, the very best. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
They're soaring, shocking, bubbling, and beaming. And on November 12th, you can catch them all in theaters for the first time. Pokemon, the first movie, plus the all-new short Pikachu's Vacation playing before Pokemon, the first movie. Together, only in theaters November 12th. Rated G.
Alright folks, and that's it for this week. I want to thank you all for listening. If you liked any of the music in this week's episode, there are links in the description down below. There's also a playlist called Single Player Radio that is nothing but music from past episodes. And that's it. I'll see you next week, and remember to keep gaming.